Good morning. It is Monday. And you know what Monday means, guys? We start out with Music Monday. So, music is encouraged but not required. But I got something. So, over the weekend, my girlfriend and I went to a movie. I almost said musical because what we went to was a music documentary. And it was at a venue. There's this kind of like punk rock thrift shop in the neighborhood I live in, Pasadena. It's called Meow Meows. I'll give it a plug because it's a really cool store. If you're ever in the area, you should totally go there. And they were showing this movie about. Well, it was not necessarily about this band, but it was compiled by this band called Rubella Ballet, which admittedly, until recently, is a band I was not familiar with. I'd never heard of them, but I saw this on Facebook. I saw this on Meow Meow's Facebook. Ironically enough, I went to Meow Meow's Facebook page to see if they had tickets for an upcoming show that was also going on Saturday. So what Meow Meow's does is they'll run these specials where if you spend $25 in their store, you get free tickets to some of the shows coming up at this other venue in town called The Rose. And sometimes The Rose has some cool shows I want to go to, other times not so much. But the English Beat was coming to The Rose. So I wanted to go see the English Beat. So I was like, I wonder if they have tickets to the English Beat. And when I went to the Facebook page to try to find that out, instead I found out about this documentary event. And it looked insanely interesting. So I decided, you know what? I think I want to go to this instead. So what it was Rubella Ballet, the band, and they were screening their movie, which is called She's a Punk Rocker. And the band was there, and they were doing a Q&A afterwards. So Rubella Ballet was one of the first anarcho-punk, goth-punk bands that were all female. They were a female-fronted band, a dominant female band. And they very much went under the radar. They never really got, they never really made it super far compared to other bands of that era, especially compared to... I wore a Clash t-shirt today since we're talking about 77. I figured it'd be appropriate to wear the Clash t-shirt today. So, anyway, I went to this movie, and it was pretty cool because I didn't know a ton about, I only know so much about that scene, like as far as being under the hood goes. I mean, I know the obvious stuff, the obvious bands, but I was not in England for it. I was not alive while it was going on. So I learned a lot from watching that documentary. And one of the things that was interesting to me was, according to the members of the band and according to the film itself, over in the punk scene in the UK during that time, during the 77 era, one of the things that they say drew them to it as women was the fact that they were really treated as equals. They said, this was a time where it wasn't necessarily proper for a woman to order a pint of lager at a bar. You were supposed to order a soft drink or a mixed drink or something like that. But the punks, they could go and they would order a beer and no one judged them. They treated them as an equal, as one of them. So it was really cool to hear that perspective. And I think one could argue that wasn't necessarily the case here in the United States. I think a lot of those early scenes, you didn't see a ton of women in them. And then, of course, later came the Riot Girl movement. And at one point we were talking about that, like during the Q&A, because she was kind of asking, she was like, was it kind of the same in the States? And a lot of people were kind of saying no. And what was sort of interesting here was that it was a bunch of dudes. It was a bunch of dudes that looked like my age or younger, explaining to this woman how it was more sexist in the United States, which, obviously their intentions were genuine, and they were and they were just excited to be in her presence. But it was sort of a little bit ironic to me that like a bunch of dudes that weren't alive for the era or at least if they were alive, they look damn good for their age. But that weren't alive for the era, and we're also dudes. We're explaining to her sexism in the punk scene from back then. But anyway, it was still a great event. And so that brings me to my question for today. And sorry to gush on and on about my event. I bought my girlfriend a very nice Rubella Ballet t-shirt that she really likes. And, you know, she said to me, she was like, you know, some guys buy their girlfriends flowers. You buy me band t-shirts. And she was happy about it. And I'm glad. I'm glad that she appreciates that. I need a girl that appreciates stuff like that because that's just my lane. You know, I told you guys the other week when we were in Huntington Beach, I bought her a David Bowie t-shirt, and she wasn't sure about it. She's like, I don't know if that shirt's meant for me. I'm like, this shirt is totally meant for you. She's worn the shirt about 2 or 3 times now, and she gets constant compliments on this David Bowie shirt. Every time she wears it, she gets compliments. I posted a picture on Instagram, tons of compliments. Whenever she goes out wearing it, tons of compliments. So anyway, so my question is, sorry to make a long story longer, but my question is, what are some music scenes that you guys want to make sure stay well documented? I mean, if this band, and in particular their singer, wasn't making the effort to document this part of that history. I mean, obviously when you hear 77 Punk, we know about its place in history. We know about the Clash, the Pistols, even, you know, the X-Ray Specs, bands like that, Crass. At one point, this entire band lived in the Crass house at some point. We all know Crass. But what are some music subgenres that you really hope remain well documented? I'll go first. I really hope that people make the effort to document the anti-folk scenes in New York City, the ones that kind of started in the 80s, the ones that Regina Spektor and Kimya Dawson came out of. I really hope that is well documented, as well as the scene over in London, because London has their own thing going on. So that's kind of a really underrepresented thing that you don't hear about too often, even though some of the people that came out of that scene have gone on to have some incredible mainstream success. I would be curious to... I hope to see that more documented. So that's my answer. I'll go to the chat in a minute, see what you guys are saying. Stephen Carl says American roots music. I'm with you. I think a lot of the Americana subgenres very much go under the radar. No one talks about them. No one even realizes that they exist. Like, no one realizes... People think that the entire landscape of country music is just, you know, my dog, my truck, America, the troops, and that's totally not true. I mean, yes, that is a part of it. That's the, you know, when I lived in Nashville, we would call that the CMA world. But certainly not, that's certainly not all of it. And a lot of those roots music, the protest music, the kind of just heartland, folky music, a lot of that. No one talks about it. But it's got a following. So good call, Steven. Daniel says grunge. And B.S. Jeffrey also says that we don't talk about grunge enough. I guess maybe grunge is overshadowed by Nirvana. I mean, there's been so much stuff out by Nirvana. I mean, there's so many movies about Nirvana. Some of them are just about the band. Others are about, you know, Kurt's death. But I guess maybe that kind of overshadows grunge. Chris Walker says underground hip-hop. I'm with you. Mama Alaska, Arlo Guthrie. B.S. Jeffrey says North Mississippi Hill Country Blues. I'm with you on that. I mean, I think that the blues in general is very much, we don't talk about that. Oh, and then B.S. Jeffrey says he was being sarcastic about grunge. I can understand that. Although, really, when you think about it, outside of 1991, there's not a ton that isn't just Nirvana-focused. I mean, there's only so much that's actually focused on that entire scene and not just Nirvana. I mean, you got 1991, but even that was, like, Supersonic Youth-centric. Old Country... the Meat Puppets. I'm with you guys on the Meat Puppets, Dan. So Meat Puppets, I saw the Meat Puppets with X last year in downtown Los Angeles for free. Yeah. For free. A lot of you guys are bringing up Delta Blues, which is amazing because I got to tell you guys, I love the Delta Blues and I really want to go. I got to get there. I've never been to the Mississippi Delta. I've heard some mixed things, but I really want to get there, and I really want to see it. I really want to see the Crossroads, because I really appreciate that music too. And where I went to college, Indiana University, I was really stoked because we had a rock and roll history department, and every Tuesday night, one of the professors would show blues documentaries from a lot of the old bluesmen. And it was insanely depressing. It was insanely depressing because everyone pretty much had the same story. They never got the money they deserved for the songs that they wrote. They never got the credit that they deserved for the songs that they wrote. And they died in poverty. That's what happened to pretty much all of them. James O'Quinn brings up swing and ska. Which era are you talking about, James? If you're first wave, I'm with you, but I don't know about second wave. Chris Wynn, Ron, you went to IU. Yes, I did. I went to IU. Dead Kennedys. Otoy 2001 says, and Derek Robert gave a shout out to Robert Johnson, the man who was poisoned by a jealous husband, who started the 27 Club. Yes. Muddy Waters. Muddy Waters, I'm with you. Bluegrass. Daniel points out bluegrass. Mike S. points out late 60s ska and rocksteady. Mike Williams gives us a shout out for Off. Stephen Carl, I saw Clarence Gatemouth Brown at the Bluebird in Bloomington, Indiana. You know who I saw at the Bluebird in Bloomington, Indiana? I saw Robert Pollard, the lead singer for Guided by Voices. He played the Bluebird in Bloomington, Indiana, which for anyone not hip to Bloomington, which I imagine is most of the people here, it's a small little club, and sometimes they bring in some hip music, other times it's just a nightclub. And they brought in Robert Pollard, lead singer of Guided by Voices, and he was hammered the entire time. I've never seen a man consume that much alcohol within a 2-hour period or while on stage. Either one. Like, I've never seen a guy, and I know some of you might not know Guided by Voices, but I know some of you do. And their Guided by Voices was basically a kind of alternative rock band in like the 80s and 90s, and they're still around. And they're known for being a big party band too. And Bob Pollard, I've never seen anything like it. Like, he just drank like a fish the entire show. The entire show. Yeah. Watson, you're asking for some anti-folk music. So I would recommend a guy named Hamel on Trial. I would recommend looking up a guy named Latch, Filthy Pedro, Regina Spektor, one of the bigger ones, and then, of course, Moldy Peaches, Kimya Dawson, and you can start there. And then there's a guy that I also really like named Soft Black. He's not necessarily all that political, but he's great. And a lot of those acts are pretty political, but not all of them. But they're all very good. Daniel Sellinger gives a shout-out to Blind Willie Johnson, which is a great shout-out. K-Line says there should be more coverage on the Dixie Chicks and what they went through during the Bush administration. I'm with you. Giovanna, Raga Rock, George Harrison, some Beatles, a little Rolling Stones. All right. Willie Nelson. Did you guys hear what Willie Nelson went through? Did you guys that actually should have been something we talk about too. Willie Nelson, everybody's surprised. Or some of his fans. It's actually a very small amount. I think they blew it out of proportion. Because if you actually looked at the Facebook post, which I did, it was mostly people in Willie's corner. But anyway, Willie Nelson went out and he's doing a concert for Beto O'Rourke. And you know, we've talked about Beto. I'm not super sold on Beto, but you know, a lot of people, they see the importance of getting Ted Cruz out of there. I get it. But, so he's doing a show for Beto O'Rourke. And some of his fans, and I think it was actually a small amount, but they're like, oh my God, Willie Nelson's doing this. I'm boycotting him now. And everyone's like, what the hell's wrong with you? How do you not know? You really think that Willie Nelson was conservative? Do you just think all older white men are conservative? Do you just assume that? You really think Willie Nelson, the dude that has been advocating for legalized pot his entire career, you really think so? It surprises you that Willie Nelson... You know that music has lyrics, right? Well, at least Willie Nelson's music does. Not all music has lyrics. But you realize... So I got a kick... But I think the media blew it out of proportion, because I went to the original post because I was curious. I don't know if anyone else did, but I went to the original post, and it was like there'd be one comment bashing Willie Nelson for it, and then there'd be like 5 comments in support of him. So I think it was a very, very small group of people that, like, they just sort of knew Willie Nelson, and yeah. So anyway, so you guys had some really good answers. Those were some really, really good answers. I appreciate it. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and